Hey everybody, how you doing? Okay, so I have heard everybody talk about who won the debate, how it's scored. There's a gentleman, Daniel Dale, doing his fact checking on CNN as I speak. It's right before me. I've heard it. I've heard my take, and I'm sharing that with you right now. Tim Walz barely beat JD Vance. There were no knockouts thrown. And Waltz started off, well, he fumbled. It was like if you handed him off the ball and he was going up for a 5 yard gain only to lose the ball. He recovered his own fumble, but the bottom line is he fumbled. And he had a deer in the headlights look that was troublesome for me to see. But then it's as if he grew to the moment and got his sea legs and said, I can do this. Maybe he was thinking about his son who said, that's my dad up there, probably. Whatever got him to change and shift his gear, he did. But he was also aided by the fact that, look, I give JD Vance credit for coming off as one thing, smooth. He has a direct, steady delivery. He consistently smiles. At no point does he ever look like things are out of control. He didn't seem like he was a deer in the headlights. He approached this as if he was natural to the situation. And from that standpoint, you've got to give him credit. No question about it. But then it's what comes out of his mouth. Okay? It's what comes out of his mouth that's troubling. And that is where I parted company with even saying that he was, able to score a draw. For example, the biggest whopper, there were a couple of big, giant whoppers for me. Three. The first one was when JD Vance said with a straight face that the Federal Reserve had a housing study that mentioned illegal immigrants and how illegal immigrants drove up housing costs. Folks, I'm on several of the Federal Reserve's mailing lists. There is no study that says that. Okay? Not even close. And there's a simple reason for that. The number of illegal immigrants coming into the United States, first of all, isn't significant enough to drive housing costs because the numbers are not big enough. They're just not enormous. And on top of that, illegal immigrants don't have generally the income to drive the market. It would be a different story if we were talking about a number coming in that's like 5 million, but they're all billionaires. That's not the case here. So to say what JD Vance said was woefully inaccurate. He said it with a straight face. Did JD Vance. Waltz gave some pushback, but the simple fact that he would blurt out something that was just so completely wrong lost me. That just caused me to shift my whole gear. I thought, And for those of you who don't think it matters, well, let me ask you, why are we talking about fact checks, right? Why are we saying, okay, does this check out? Does that check out? Well, I'm saying that JD Vance makes a huge number of statements that just don't pass the reality mustard. They just don't. And so to me, he's like, well, another slick Republican in the style of Tricky Dick, Richard Nixon. Smooth, getting you in to think about the world the way that they see it, but also not thinking about how they're basically picking your pocket at the same time. That's JD Vance. I don't prize that in an official. I don't prize that in a debater. And I believe that you should be able to know the facts, not twist them, and understand how to essentially, as a leader, make reality your friend. And JD Vance doesn't come across that way to me. Tim Waltz does. He found his sea legs in talking about the Affordable Care Act. And when he did, boy, that was a near knockout. He had JD Vance basically, oh boy, lolling back and forth, just about to teeter on the verge of collapsing in a TKO, but didn't quite hit it. Didn't quite hit it. Only because of the fact that Vance doesn't give that flustered look like, hey, he got me off balance, right? Or he made me say something that was, not the case. But I will tell you where JD Vance really screwed up. He backed himself into the corner. And I thought Tim Walz did a decent job of kind of keeping him there, but he could have done a little better. And that was when Vance said that in response to the question regarding January 6th, he basically said, I'm just dealing with the future. Well, you know what? The past is prologue, okay? And to erase January 6th like never happened is an insult to the people who died. It's an insult to the Capitol police officers whose lives were in danger. It's an insult to the Congress people whose lives were in danger. It's an insult to Americans who count on the Congress to work and represent democracy the way the founding fathers intended. It's a complete insult to all of them. And J.D. Vance did that in one fell swoop. Boom. So again, Vance is smooth, but he's one of these guys where you need to start and listen to what he says. I listened to what he said, and I found his delivery wanting. Now, did I enjoy the fact that both of them got along and everything else? Yeah, I did. It was a good debate. But again, J.D. Vance comes off as a guy who will pick your pocket. He comes off as a guy who is not honest. He comes off as a guy who's slick. He comes off as a guy who could be, hey, look, a candidate for embezzling funds somewhere, either in this part of the world or some other part of the world. That's J.D. Vance. Tim Walz comes off like everyone calls him a coach. Yeah. When I think of a coach, I think of an honest person who doesn't always tell you what you want to hear, but he tells you what you need to know, and he's going to be, or she's going to be, because there are great female coaches like that, in your corner. That's him, all right? And he's in the tradition of some great Democrats. So I really have a lot of respect for how Walz came off. And again, yeah, he stumbled, as I said in the outset of my presentation, but he really did find his sea legs and his confidence. And he's got this every person attitude. He came in looking like the every person, kind of like, oh, here I am. And then it's like, oh my God, here's this slickster who's like this Ivy League kind of guy. And oh, you know what? He's nice enough, but I've got to best him anyway, because I know that what he's saying is absolutely ridiculous. That guy. I mean, and where I thought, okay, that the other question basically is, did Vance do enough to turn the election around toward Trump? No, absolutely not, because Donald did an awful job. He's not ready to be president again. He clearly has the weight of his own errors on his mind, and the country is caught up with his shtick. Let's face it, people are tired of it. And not only that, arguably, you can make a sound argument that Donald Trump trying to manipulate his friends into jacking up the prices to cause inflation, all right, is a good reason why we're here. And I'm really surprised that no Democrat has made that point. But it's a fact that Donald Trump has been making those moves to cause prices to go up so that he can say, hey, look, I'm not president. These prices are up. Make me president. The prices will come down. Okay. That's Trump. You don't believe that about Trump? You have no idea how he rolls. This guy he's straight out of the Wall Street Playbook starring Gordon Gekko. He's in and out for the buck, and he don't take prisoners. You have to remember that about Donald Trump. That's a line that Martin Sheen uttered playing Bud Fox's dad in Wall Street, where he said he's using you, kid. He's got your prick in your back pocket, but you're too young to see it. And I think Charlie that was Bud Fox's retort to his dad, was that basically he's just jealous that he hasn't been able to come up like Gordon Gekko has, which of course Charlie Sheen's dad, Bud Fox's dad, took as a sad insult, and then he had a heart attack, and then they made up, all that stuff. But Wall Street's a classically great movie. If you haven't seen it, see it. At any rate, it's also a look at a kind of American business that built America. for better or worse. And that's up to you to decide. I happen to think it's for the better because there are aspects of it that I believe are missing today. But that momentary aside, I'll come back home here. I think Tim Walz is the kind of person that does a great job of connecting the rural person. He came off with like the rural guy, the guy that you wanted to deal with. He came up with a guy that if I'm trying to get rural Republicans to vote for me and I'm a Democrat, I send in Tim. That's the guy. He did that. He came also off like the guy who was indignant at the end, the guy who wasn't trusting of the slick capitalist, slickster kind of, talking, the double talking, all that sort of thing. And so I really give him credit for that. Yes, again, his initial presentation hurt, but he came back and performed marvelously well. But he was also aided. He was also aided by J.D. Vance's many lies. And again, the biggest lie is the whole matter about housing and immigrants having impacts on housing and being a Federal Reserve study when there is no Federal Reserve study out there that says that at all. None. Okay. And then his comment about January 6th. Forget that. And then the whole comment about, hey, are you going to actually admit that you won? Okay, I'll give J.D. Vance credit for saying, hey, look, if the Democrats win, I'll back it. That was a great plus. But then he should have backed it up by saying, hey, look, January 6th shouldn't have happened. I mean, it's like he was trying to walk the line between it as a guy who I think it was once a Democrat and then became a Republican, something like that. But those two comments really stick out for me. And again, when I think of J.D. Vance, I think about his stirring defense of the Affordable Care Act, of which I'm a beneficiary. I think that was virtuoso. And he says, look, this is where being an old guy matters. I was there. And then he just went on a complete laying out of what happened with the Affordable Care Act, how Donald Trump lost his battle with the Supreme Court, how he tried to take it to Congress, how John McCain turned around and came out. I remember that day. Thumbs down. Oh, I cheered like nobody's business. Amazing day. It was an amazing day for America. Amazing day for American healthcare. It really was. So that's my take. Love to know yours. And I'll clock out. Hey, subscribe to Zenny62 on YouTube and bookmark ZennyReport.com. We'll see you.